Thank you for visiting Round Rock Ministry. Today I want to bring a couple questions to the study. A couple questions that are very common, perhaps you've heard them. Was Jesus a prophet, or is Jesus the prophet? These two questions arise from a couple of key central passages in the Old Testament that I hope to share with you in the course of this study. And actually this video is just a brief introduction. I want to refer you to a further discussion of this subject in my blog titled, If There Is a Prophet. The question so often is answered in the affirmative. People answer, yes, he was a prophet. People talk about Muhammad, Buddha, and Moses. And without speaking or addressing the applicability of this term to those three individuals, it is when it is applied to Jesus that it's of concern to the church. There are two key passages, as I said, that I want to refer you to. One of them, the first one, is in Numbers chapter 12. Just to give you a very brief background to that, you may recall that is when Miriam and Aaron murmur. Basically what they are saying, well, what are we, small fry? Hasn't the Lord spoken to us as well? And the Lord heard it. The Lord then calls all three of them out of the camp, out of the tent. They come out and he proceeds to enlighten them as well as us as to just what is it that constitutes a prophet. God, in brief, explains to them what a prophet is. And here's a passage taken from Numbers chapter 12, verse 6 and following. He said, "Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, shall make myself known to him in a vision. I shall speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, even openly, and not in dark sayings. And he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" In this passage in Numbers chapter 12, God defines for us exactly what constitutes a prophet. A prophet, he says, if there is a prophet in your midst, I communicate with him through visions and dreams. Not so with my servant Moses, which in itself suggests to us something about Moses, that God considered him as something more than a prophet. But there's another passage also to be examined. It is Deuteronomy chapter 18. It is that passage in which God, speaking through Moses, speaking to Israel, says, I will raise up a prophet from among your brethren. This is a key passage where a lot of my brothers and sisters in Christ look to and take or draw their basis for claiming Jesus is a prophet, or that Jesus is the prophet. However, a closer examination of this passage in the New Testament is the best explanation, the best interpretation, the best application of the passage. There are two passages that we will examine, and they are in Acts chapter 3 and Acts chapter 7. Those are the only two instances in the New Testament where the Deuteronomy 18 passage is cited. The first one in chapter 3 is quoted by Peter. The second one is quoted by Stephen. In both passages, you look at the context of those passages, and in both passages, both Peter and Stephen are applying it to the prophets. In other words, going back to Deuteronomy 18, what God is declaring to Israel at that time, when he says, I will raise up a prophet, is that at that point now, the Levitical priesthood has been set up. They were the priests that interceded, that led Israel in sacrifice to God. But there would come a time when Moses would be no longer with Israel. And who then was to speak on behalf of God to those people? It was to be the messengers of God, the prophets of God. And so, beginning with Moses, or Samuel actually, beginning with Samuel on, we have a succession of prophets that continued on through all the way up into John, of whom Jesus himself says of John the Baptist, he was more than a prophet. I am mindful that there are various interpretations, perceptions rather, that people in the New Testament had of Jesus as a prophet. But Jesus himself did not regard himself as a prophet. He did not present himself as a prophet. The apostles themselves did not present him as a prophet. So I want to encourage you to take your time or a closer reading of the article that pertains to this subject. This is only intended as just a very brief introduction. So thank you again for visiting Round Rock Ministry. Thank you, and God bless you.